I made this apple crumble sourdough bread that's supposed to be a little different from the regular sourdough breads because I used a stiff starter to break through the sourness of the sourdough. So I'm gonna cut it now. The house smells like apples and cinnamon, of course, because in the inclusions, as you'll see throughout the video, I used butter, cinnamon mixture, and brown sugar. It feels a little bit like a croissant bread, so it's very flaky, and I'm very excited to try it. It's still a little warm. It has been about 2.5 hours since it's baked. So let's cut it and then stick around for the video to see how I made it. I have my sweet starter here, and I'm going to use this sweet starter for a sandwich loaf and for the apple crumble sourdough bread. So I'm just going to measure here. It's got stuck everywhere, but I love how webby the sweet starter is. You see that? So I have 100 grams of stiff starter. I'm going to do a tablespoon of maple syrup. You can use honey as well, but my baby usually tends to reach for my bread. Oh, and we don't do honey yet for this little guy. And because I suspected the apples is going to add they're going to add some hydration. They're going to make the dough more wet. I'm going to go for a 65% hydration. So it's just going to be 1 loaf of bread, so 325 grams of water, and I'm going to do 500 grams of flour. So I've also been loving how butter has been making my loaves feel. This is hot, so I'm just going to put 2 tablespoons of melted butter. And because I want the loaf to be on the sweeter side, I'm only going to put a little bit of salt. This is actually a ½ teaspoon, so I think that's still okay. And we're going to mix this one before we add 500 grams of flour. So it's going to be a little harder to mix the stiff starter. So I'm just going to take a few minutes here until it's nicely incorporated. I'm using a spoon, but a fork or a whisker will be much better, or like a dough whisker. And I switched to a whisker just because it's so much easier to kind of incorporate the stiff dough. And now we're just going to add the 500 grams of flour. Yeah, and I'm just using all-purpose flour here. Yeah, and we're going to mix it. So all the ingredients are nicely incorporated here. I'm going to wash my hands and go a little bit with my hands because I always like to knead the dough for a few minutes, 3 to 4 minutes, just in case I don't have enough time to do all the stretch and folds. This way I would have worked up the gluten a little bit, and I usually don't do a lot of stretch and folds just because I have my hands full with other things. This is how our dough looks like, and now we're just going to cover and let it rest for 1 to 2 hours, depending how much time you have on hand. And while the dough rests, I'm going to get started on the apple mixture that I'm going to add to the sourdough. I wanted to make this because I have these tarty apples on hand, so I'm just chopping them in small pieces here. I used 1.5 apples almost for this mixture, and it was a little bit too much, so you can get away with 1 medium-sized apple easily. We want the apples to be cooked, so I'm just melting some butter in the pan, adding all those apples. I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. I'm going to add some cinnamon. I eyeballed it, but it's at least ½ tablespoon of cinnamon that I poured here. but if you prefer more cinnamon, it never hurts. You can add some more. So I'm going to saute them for a little bit, and then I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of water and cover and let them simmer and cook in there for about 8 minutes. Then I'm going to just add a tablespoon of flour. The reason why I want some flour is because if the apples are floured, they're not going to sink to the bottom of the loaf, but they're going to be distributed nicely all over the sourdough bread. And then we're going to let that cool off, and while we wait for that to cool off, I'm going to prepare the butter brown sugar mixture. So I'm just adding 2 tablespoons of room temperature butter, 3 tablespoons of brown sugar, and then I'm going to crumble that together, and I'm going to add about 4 tablespoons of oats. We're going to use the stretch and folds now. This is the second set of stretch and folds to incorporate all this apple and the butter crumble mixture. I find that sometimes when you're using so much, I will do like instead of a stretch and fold, it's like a roll and kind of fold it. I wonder if it will take a little bit more. I might have quite a lot, but that's not a problem because this is delicious to just eat on its own as well. But I am going to I am going to incorporate all of this brown sugar and butter mixture in it. And that's why it's good to start incorporating it from the second set of stretch and folds once the dough has built a little bit, but then you'll have like 3 or 4 more to make sure that all of these inclusions are nicely incorporated. For now, I think I'm going to leave this one in here and come back after half an hour. I did one more set of stretch and folds, and we're going to switch to coil folds now. And the dough is going to be normally quite wet, but that is okay. Okay, and we're in the last set of stretch and folds. Before we let the dough rise and double in size. The dough has been rising at room temperature for about 4 hours now. It's quite warm, we're in the summer, so it rises a bit quicker. And I'm just gonna pre-shape it and get it ready for cold ferment. When pre-shaping, I like to spread the dough as thin as I can without breaking it and creating like lots of holes in it. So that's exactly what I'm doing here. It expect a little bit more stickiness from the apples, the butter, and everything that is in the inclusion, so I ended up adding a little bit more flour just to make sure I have it in that shape that I'm looking for, and I typically do. So I'm using more flour than I usually use. But the dough is also very fun to work with, so sometimes I find myself just overworking it a little bit. How can I not? And now I just let it rest for 20 minutes while I shape other dough that I'm making. And after it had rested, I gave it its final shape and I placed it in my regular bowl that I just lined with a well-floured towel. And then this loaf cold fermented in the fridge for about 16 hours before I was ready to bake it. Because of all the butter in the inclusions, I did not expect this loaf to have like a big oven spring, so I just scored it before putting it in the oven. But in hindsight, I wished I had waited for 5-7 minutes and done a delayed score just to see if we would have gotten a bit more of an ear. Still a little hot. So perfectly distributed everywhere. Ten out of 10 recommend. Thank you for watching, and I hopefully see you on the next video. If you do try it, let me know what you think. And if you like my videos, make sure to subscribe and like